Hey, what's up everyone? It's Jack Money Trades back here again with another video, and today I wanted to talk about Apple's WWDC event, which was held on Monday. So, in my opinion, this was one of the strangest and in many ways most disappointing WWDC events that we've seen for a number of reasons. And it's not all bad, of course, but I think that there were definitely some notable features that were missing and a lack of announcements for devices that I feel really needed features the most, like the iPad. But with that being said, let's get straight into it. And before we do, definitely make sure to go ahead down below and smash the subscribe button, as we're getting really close to 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love to have you guys as a part of the community. But with that said, let's get into it. So starting out with iOS 18, this update is pretty nice in a few ways. As Apple have been doing more and more recently, this update mainly just cleans up the UI of several apps like Photos and Calendar, which are the notable ones. And they also showed off a newly redesigned Mail app, which I think looks pretty interesting and pretty cool. At least in Developer Beta 1, though, on the iPhone 14 Pro Max, the redesign is notably missing. So maybe we'll see that a little bit later in the fall. I don't know. We'll kind of get into that a little bit more at the end of the video, though, when we talk about Apple Intelligence. But they also showed off some really exciting updates to Control Center, which are very welcome. Now you can actually fully customize your Control Center, add controls from system settings, accessibility, and it'll even be opened up to developers, so that way they can provide us with their own quick toggles and actions for their apps. They also gave us categories inside of Control Center, which is a pretty nice thing, and that really is a cool unifying feature that kind of groups together similar things. So, you have your media controls that are all grouped together on one page. You have all of your home controls that are grouped together on another page. So that's definitely a really cool and welcome feature. We also get some nice new messaging features, like the ability to tap back with any emoji, including Memojis, which is kind of cool. We can also now format our text messages with bold, italic, underscore, and strike through to emphasize certain parts of our writing, and we can even animate portions of our text, so that is actually a pretty exciting feature, and I'm always happy to see Apple giving us more features to better connect with friends and family. But the last major feature that they showed off on stage was the ability to fully customize our home screens by altering the looks of the apps with a new dark theme, and even the option to tint our apps system-wide. Now, I think this is a cool feature, but not one that I really see myself using. The tinted apps just kind of look a little bit boring, and since the tint applies to all of your widgets as well, you also lose out on detail like the activity ring colors and things like that, where color actually means something. So, since it's a sort of system-wide thing, I'm not really the biggest fan of it, but if it's your jam, go for it. We also got some really cool updates for watchOS. Not really, though, but if I'm being completely honest, nothing actually stood out to me in any meaningful way. I mean, sure, there are some features like effort tracking, which may be helpful to some people who are training pretty consistently in sports or other things like that. And the health features centered around pregnancy will definitely be helpful for women, but, it's not really that big of an update for universally applicable features. In my opinion, there was really only one new watch face and really not much beyond that. And really, in my opinion, and I've been saying this for years now, the best thing that Apple could do with the watch is to open up the watch face to developers. If Apple just allowed developers to design their own watch faces and distribute them, I think it would really change the game and make the Apple Watch a much more exciting and much more convincing product. But I digress. For the Mac, they also announced OS Sequoia, which again was a pretty underwhelming release. Though, to be fair, I'm actually pretty happy with the way that my Mac performs right now, and I don't really have too much that I could point to as being a problem that keeps me from getting my work done in a fast and meaningful way. But with that said, the major feature that they showed off was window snapping, and this is something that's extremely reminiscent of Windows 11, but I'm not going to complain. I'm glad to see it coming to the Mac regardless. It's, definitely going to be something that'll help out. With those of you guys who like working with multiple apps on your desktop, you can now just basically snap your windows all around to different corners, and it'll make setting up a nice layout for you a lot easier than it was before. The biggest update, though, came in the form of iPhone mirroring. So this feature is actually pretty mind-blowing, and essentially what it entails is that you have your iPhone sitting nearby, and it'll automatically forward all of your notifications to your Mac. That's already pretty cool. But further, if you want to interact with any of them, your Mac will now open up a window of your phone's display for you to fully interact with the notifications and the apps and do daily tasks that you would normally do on your iPhone, all without ever even having to grab it. Now, the best part of this is that your actual phone display remains dormant. Or if you have it on a charging stand, it'll remain in standby mode. So that's really cool because that, when they first announced this, I kind of had a instant question, which was, okay, well, what about security? Because, obviously if you're working with your iPhone on your Mac and your iPhone is actually showing what your Mac is showing, that's kind of a bit of a security risk if your iPhone is really far away from you and somebody just happens to be walking by, picks it up, and starts playing around with your iPhone while you're doing your Mac stuff. That would be a really bad thing, but it's really nice that they thought of this, so don't be worried about that. The next thing that they showed off was Vision OS 2, which, as pretty much everybody else on YouTube has said, seems more like an incremental update than anything. It does bring some UI and navigation settings that'll help the user experience and help navigation to be a little bit easier, so that's kind of cool. And it also brings a new AI tool that can essentially transform any photo taken in 2D into a 3D stereoscopic photo for you to enjoy. I don't know how well it works in real life because I don't have a Vision Pro, but it definitely sounds like a pretty cool feature and something that might be useful to some people. So that's pretty cool. The rest of it was pretty forgettable in my opinion though. So let's move on to the iPad, which was the most disappointing announcement of all of WWDC in my opinion. This is where Apple, yet again, had the chance to utterly shock us with the biggest update to ever come to iPad, but instead gave us the features of iOS 18 as usual, with no real defining features that are unique to the iPad. Honestly, Apple, what are you doing? The iPad is one of the most powerful products that you sell, but it's also one of the most limited products that you offer. Why is that? The coolest feature coming to the iPad is the calculator app. And I know that that sounds really stupid, and it may sound a little bit like I'm being facetious here, but I'm actually being honest, the calculator app is actually pretty cool. The Math Notes feature allows you to handwrite mathematical expressions, and it'll automatically update answers for you in real time, even if you add in complex sort of functionality like logarithms or exponentials or other things like that. So that's a really cool feature. You can also create functional equations with variables, and then you can plot the results and use sliders for all of your variables, which is also a really, really cool thing so that we can see how the function changes in response to input variables. So again, that's really, really cool. But again, it's not unique to the iPad. It's also coming to the iPhone. So personally, I think that features that Apple really needs to bring to the iPad are, number one, improvements to multitasking. Now, generally, I'm pretty happy with my experience already since I mainly just use the standard split screen where I have two apps and then maybe a third in slide over. But there are times when I want to use more than one app at a time, and the current implementation of Stage Manager is artificially limited by letting us only have 4 apps open at once, even on the insanely powerful M4 iPad Pro. There's also no tile snapping like was introduced to the Mac, which would really help with organization of multiple apps and make utility of that Stage Manager feature a lot better. The iPad also continues to lack notably important quality of life features like an eject button for drives. I mean, obviously, who would ever implement external drive support without giving you the option to safely eject a drive? Apple does apparently, and apparently they don't care about it because they're still not providing us with an ejection button for drives. Really? The other thing too is that we're missing a disk utility for partitioning and formatting drives, and we're also missing a command line, which for some people may not be a big deal, but for me, I really like the command line because it allows me to really quickly do simple things on my Mac, like make directories, change directories, open files, other things like that. And I can also script in it, which is extraordinarily important for me and the kind of work that I do. Honestly, though, I really hope that Apple decides to stop being so thick about their decisions to keep the iPad so separate from the Mac when it so desperately needs to become more like the Mac to stay relevant. So, as you can see from this quick recap, the software was utterly underwhelming, which is really sad since WWDC is typically all about the software. But these announcements only took 1 of the 2 hours of the event. So what else did they talk for a full hour? Well, they introduced Apple Intelligence, which in my opinion is actually extremely exciting in a number of ways because it gives us common AI features directly integrated into the OS at the silicon level. So this is going to be coming to iOS, iPadOS, and macOS with functionality to write text, revise text, summarize web pages, categorize email, provide summaries to text messages and group messages, and even do complex tasks associated with planning a trip automatically, and many, many more. And all of these things happen, as I said, on device, on the silicon that is in your pocket, all without having to send data to an external server. They even showed off a really cool generative emoji tool and generative AI picture generator, which will help you to make communication with iMessage even more fun than it already is. They also decided to deeply integrate this intelligence into Siri, and so now it'll actually be a competent assistant again. They also placed a huge emphasis on privacy associated with Apple Intelligence and introduced private cloud compute, which is an Apple Silicon-based external server bank for tackling more processor-intensive AI tasks when your device onboard processor can't handle the complexity of a request that you make. Both on-device and private cloud compute tasks, Apple promised would be fully secure, fully private, and not log your data, so that's a really good thing, as long as you believe Apple and you think that they're trustworthy. Although much of the AI stuff is going to be handled by Apple with Apple security backing, there are some times where other models might be able to handle a query better, so Apple is also going to be introducing ChatGPT directly into the software without your need for a subscription. Now, the nice thing here is that if your device thinks that ChatGPT is going to be able to handle your query better than it can, it'll ask you every single time if you want to send information to ChatGPT, and it'll never just do it without your permission. So that's something that's really, really important to me, at least. So all in all, I think that Apple Intelligence was really the most exciting thing that Apple announced, and I think it's going to revolutionize the way that we use our devices and help us to be more productive and efficient in a lot of areas in our life now. But with that being said, here is where Apple again disappointed me quite a bit. The only iPhone to get Apple Intelligence is the iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max. Seriously, Apple? You've been bragging about your chips for years, having these insanely powerful ML engines. And the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max chips aren't really that different from the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max or even the 13 Pro and Pro Max chips. So why is the 15 Pro the only one that can take advantage of Apple Intelligence? But for other devices, as long as it contains at least an M1 chip, you're going to be getting Apple Intelligence, so that's really nice. So pretty much all of the recent Macs and iPads will have that. Another thing that's kind of disappointing is the availability. So even people with developer accounts like myself will have to wait all the way until the fall to be able to test these features for ourselves. But what are your thoughts? Did something stand out to you in the keynote that I didn't mention here? Are you excited about Apple Intelligence? Why or why not? Definitely leave your thoughts and comments down below in the comment section and continue the discussion. Also, while you're down there, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel to help us reach more people with this content, and share the video if you want. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love to have you guys along for the journey. But with that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.